All right. Welcome, everybody. My name is Eugenia, and I'll be presenting today on crafting community. I'm really excited to be here, really excited that Andrew allowed me to just come on board and just really talk about something that I'm really, really passionate about, which is craft beer. And also just discussing how we can work together to form partnerships, to build community, and to just share with people something that we love, which is beer. So I don't know if you all are drinking. It is kind of early, but this is a craft beer conference. And so I took the day off. So fortunately enough, I can't drink. So I will be having a beer with you all today. So definitely cheers. I really appreciate you all for taking the time to be here. And I really hope that you're able to get something from my presentation. I just got back from being on vacation. And so I was just talking to Andrew a few minutes ago, and I said to myself, I don't know if this is such a good idea. But you know what? It's always a fun time when I'm able to just connect with people and talk to people about something that I love. And so I'm here. I'm excited. I have beer. And for those wondering what I'm drinking, I am sipping on some Rhinegeist Truth IPA. I'm really excited. We can't get Rhinegeist here in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I am. So I'm excited to be able to try it. I had a friend send it. So cheers. All right. So before we get started, the objective of this session, which I really, really hope I hit on, but I'm kind of going backwards in just how I'm discussing everything. So the main focus of what I want to focus on for this presentation is really just, how breweries and how customers can engage in conversation with their local community to strengthen relationships, to build partnerships, and to work together to address issues that affect our community. How I'm going to talk about this will be a little bit different. So I'm going to first start off by just asking a simple question and just breaking down tap room culture, breaking down brewery culture, and just really examining that first. And then we'll come back around full circle. And then I want to talk a little bit about some of the cool things that I've been a part of that I think really contributed to all of these different things as far as strengthening relationships and building partnerships. So a little bit backwards and a little bit full circle, but I promise at the end it will all make sense and it will all connect. For those that don't know me, my name is Eugenia, and some random facts. I am the founder of Beer Chick LLC, and so Beer Chick LLC is my business, and really it's a lifestyle brand and a platform that I use to connect people who share love of beer. I focus a lot on women and our representation in the beer community, as well as highlight women of color in the beer community. But overall, my business is really just it really just exists to just connect people who share love of beer. And so that's men, women, black, white, any and everybody, new beer drinkers, old beer drinkers. That's the one thing that I truly, truly enjoy doing. And so kind of started this off as a passion project and turned it into a business and brand. And it's my baby, it's my heart, and it means a lot to me. A couple other things. So I always feel like I'm a newbie in the beer community. I've loved beer since college, which was, I know I may look really young, but it was a while ago, at least about 10 years ago. But fell in love with beer in college, and so been drinking it for a while and just became even more fascinated with it and started researching it and, visiting breweries and trying out different things, and really became obsessed with the whole Cicerone program. And so decided I wanted to pursue that and started taking beer education classes at local breweries here in Charlotte, and was able to pass my level 1 Cicerone certified beer server. And so I'm currently attempting to study for level 2. But I always joke and I tell people that I do a lot of drinking and not that much studying, which, it's relative. I think drinking is a part of studying, but I definitely need to be more intentional about it and spend more time. But that's definitely one of the things that I really hope to accomplish. For Charlotte, for those of you that are familiar with Pink Boots, which is a professional women's organization for any women that work in the fermented beverage industry, which is really cool because for a long time it was just beer. And so we just recently opened it up to all fermented beverages. So that's wine, that's cider, that's mead, that's spirits. And so really excited and fortunate to be a leader of that group that really does a lot to just empower women and really support women through education as it relates to these different industries. I'm also a brewer, so got a really great opportunity to get my first job at a brewery where not only did I get brewing experience, but I was also a beer tender. And so at that brewery, Pilot Brewing here in Charlotte, North Carolina, I learned how to brew beer, and lots of fun, loved it. I brewed about 4 beers with them. And so that was really, really exciting. I had people to really just pour into me because they knew that I was passionate about it. And so that's been exciting. And I'm excited because one of the beers I brewed, well, the last beer I brewed, actually they submitted to GABF. So fingers crossed. I'm a beer drinker. So, forget all the other stuff. At the end of the day, I'm definitely a beer drinker. Love beer. I just got back in town from being in Texas for the weekend, and I came home to 4 boxes of beer. I haven't even opened them yet, so it'll be fun later. I'm an extroverted introvert, which if you know what that means, you can relate. So I'm a people person, but I also love existing in my own world. And last but not least, I'm a Black woman, and I think that is really important as a part of my identity and all of these different things I have on the slide because I navigate the beer community and the beer industry as a Black woman. And so that's something that means a lot to me. And in this presentation, I'll definitely talk about my experiences as well as other women of color experiences. But yeah, so that's me. That's Eugenia. Hope that gives you a little bit of a sense of who I am. And so everything I'm talking about today truly will come from the heart. It's me and my perspective and my experiences. And I think it's a lot of good information that hopefully you'll be able to take back if you work at a brewery, if you are a consumer and you drink beer, conversation that you can have with your friends, because I think it's the responsibility of all parties involved, the breweries as well as the consumers that drink the beer, to make sure that we're really creating a space that's inviting for everyone. So I'll go ahead and jump right in. All right. So I said that I was going to kind of start backwards a little bit and start with a question. So the question that I'm really focusing on for this presentation, and then we'll come back at the end and really just tie it all together, is how do our behaviors and interactions with others shape taproom culture and the beer community? So I'm a words person. Outside of beer, I love words. I love to read. I'm a book nerd for sure. I love definitions. I love looking up things that I don't know. So, and even just beginning to answer this question, one of the things I wanted to do was break it down. And so this is like so elementary for the most part, but I think definitions are important and understanding words are important. That way you can make sure that you all are interpreting them in the same way. So we're going to break some of these definitions down. We're going to break down behaviors and what I mean by that. We're going to break down interaction. We're going to break down what it means to shape something. We're going to break down, what a tap room is, very simple concepts, but I think is really important to be on the same page. We're going to break down culture. We're going to break down community. That way, before we even get into the meat of the presentation and having our conversation, we know what we're talking about and we have the same understanding of all of these words. So say what? All right. What are the definitions? So behaviors, the way in which one acts or conducts oneself, especially towards others. Interactions, the communication or direct involvement with someone or something. Shape, to develop in a particular way or progress. Tap room, a room in which alcoholic drinks, especially beer, are available on tap. Culture, the customs, arts, social institutions, and achievements of a particular nation, people, or other social group. And then community, a group of people living in the same place or having a particular characteristic in common. So I'll just go back to that question and how we tied it all together. How do our behaviors and interactions with others shape taproom culture and the beer community? All right. So now that we're on the same page and we know what all those words mean, let's kind of break it down one by one. So I want to talk a little bit about behaviors. I want to talk a little bit about interactions and talk a little bit about how those two things kind of shape the tap room and how culture plays into that and how community plays into that. All right. So when you talk about behaviors, so we just said that the definition is the way in which one acts or conducts themselves. So this is basically how you respond to others, how you conduct yourself when you're in the tap room, how you look at people when they enter the tap room. And so it kind of gave me this whole, oh, you can't sit with us mentality. And if you are a Mean Girls fan or you've seen that movie, that's really popular from that movie. A lot of people, I feel like, when it relates to breweries, feel as if it's an environment where you can't sit with us. And so, like I said in this presentation, I'll share a lot of my experience, but, being a consumer and walking in the breweries and tap rooms for the first time, some of the questions I asked myself was, do I belong here? If I'd never been to a brewery before and someone invited me, will there be anyone there that looks like me? Another question, will they look at me funny? And so I think to a certain extent, these all seem immature, but when you're stepping into a space that you're not normally used to being in, you weren't really sure how you're going to feel. And so I'm pretty sure we've all stepped in places where maybe we felt like we were overdressed or underdressed, or maybe we just felt uncomfortable because we didn't know any familiar faces. And I think that same frame of mind happens when people walk into breweries that are not really familiar with, the environment. And so as a consumer, you ask yourself those questions. But then I think as members in the industry and working in the brewing industry, what can we do to make sure that they do feel like they belong? What can we do to make sure that they do see people that look like them and that they don't feel funny? I like to focus on these four things. And I mean, I'm sure you've heard people talk about them time and time again. But when you talk about breweries and the culture and creating that music is a big one for me. I listen to everything, but I feel like all music is typically not represented in breweries. And so when you talk about making sure the space is inclusive so that, hey, you can sit with us, being intentional about something as simple as the music is really important. Yeah, you want to be mindful of families and, make sure that maybe there's some profanity or something, but you can be eclectic in your music taste. And I feel like if the music is good, people will stay. I've literally had people at the brewery before leave because they did not like the music. Social media images. This is something I don't think we really think about, but recently I had a friend notice that a brewery had posted a picture of a person of color's hand, or so we thought. But if you zoomed in on the picture, you can see that they just added color to the hand. It wasn't. And so instead of having to edit pictures to show representation, why not actually take pictures of brown and black people and get those stock images so you can display them on your social media? Hiring and staff practices, we talk about this all the time. When you talk about if you belong here, walking through the door and being able to make eye contact with maybe that one person behind the bar that looks like you is a very powerful thing. And so while a lot of times, first thing we see is physical appearance, something like that can be really soothing. And I like to be really frank and honest when I say, a lot of times as a person of color, we subconsciously, whenever we walk into a space, we kind of scan the room. And so if you have friends and you've had conversations like such, you may have heard this before, but we kind of scan the room just to see, how many of us are in the space. Not that it makes us leave or not feel comfortable. For some, it very well may be the case, but it's a safety thing almost. And so just something different to think about. And then events. When you talk about events, what kind of events are you hosting at your brewery? Every brewery has yoga. Every brewery has music bingo. But are you hosting any cultural events? Have you even thought about reaching out to any cultural groups to have any events there? So I think there's so many different ways you can be intentional about making your tap rooms more inclusive that will in turn, bring more people through the doors. And it's all about behaviors and how you do so. All right, next thing I want to talk about. Interaction. So customer service plays such a critical role in the service industry. You can literally have the best beer, but if your service sucks, people will not return. I know I won't. I think a lot of breweries, they fail to train their staff on this, which honestly, I jokingly say should be common sense, but we know common sense is not always common. But I will say that whole "what do you want" attitude, as if when I walk through the doors, I'm bothering you, is really destructive when it comes to wanting repeat customers and wanting repeat consumers to walk through those doors. I know one of the things that I can recall lots of times is just walking through the brewery and just kind of standing there and no one ever greeting me. And that irks my nerves. I can't stand it. I'm here obviously to patronize your business, show me some customer service, acknowledge me, and don't acknowledge the person behind me and ignore me. And so I had that happen recently at a North Carolina brewery, and I just had a really, really bad experience. And I won't say, but it completely just changed my mindset on ever wanting to go back there again. And I don't care to. But one of the things I really want to point out, as far as this whole mindset of just interactions and how that plays such a huge role. Stephanie Grant wrote this article. She's an amazing woman, a friend of mine. She wrote this article called "Drinking While Black." And so in this article for Good Beer Honey, she basically just kind of shared her experience as a Black woman visiting Asheville for the first time and going into breweries and how that made her feel. And so I'm going to share a few of the things that came from that article because I felt like it was really, really powerful. So one of the things she said was that as a Black person, you often find yourself questioning your interactions with others. And we're talking about interactions. Why did he give me such a detailed explanation of their IPAs? Does he do that for everyone? Or did he do it because I'm Black or am I a woman? I've had this experience happen so many times where I'll sit down and, I want to think that they're just being really good beer tenders and just asking questions. But when I'm looking at the menu and they're just like, oh, well, what do you like? Can I help you find something? And it's like, well, if you just give me a minute, I'll tell you what I like. And so, I hate to think in those moments that they're automatically assuming that I don't know anything about beer, but sometimes it definitely does feel that way, especially when, a new beer would have just come out. Maybe the new West Coast IPA came out, and I sit down and they don't offer me that. But then the next guy sits down and like, oh, you might like this, but then they offer me the sour. Well, what if I wanted the West Coast IPA? So just little things like that, I think a lot of us deal with on occasion. Let's see, the next one. Every day I live with injustice assigned to my skin color, but until now, white Americans have the ability to distance themselves from the struggles of living in a society steeped in systemic racism. This really talks about just what we've been experiencing as a country right now. And I know earlier today, Marcus from Whether Souls was on talking about that whole initiative. But, I do think what that whole initiative and that beer being brewed across the country, that it's really helped a lot of people just open their eyes. I think we have a way of disconnecting ourselves from things that don't necessarily affect us. And so with everything going on in the country, I think this initiative has just made such an amazing impact and helped people to realize that, what, we're all in this together. And so not only should, racial injustice matter to me as a person of color, it should matter to everyone, because at the end of the day, it really is a humanity thing, and not a Black and white thing. And then the last one, and I love this one because I think a lot of times when you talk about stereotypically what the beer community is, we hear the white guy with beards. I was having a conversation with someone, and, even when you talk about breweries and ownership and the 1% of all breweries being minority or Black owned, a lot of us didn't really grow up in families or environments with people who own breweries or knew a lot about breweries. And so for a lot of us, it's us coming of age and just discovering for the first time that we like craft beer. But when we do discover that, it's really cool because just like everything else, we're so multifaceted as individuals, we, add it into our lives. And so this last comment from the article, I really, really like. Now my beer scene looks like meeting up with women who swap tasting notes, discuss the cultural importance of Beyonce's homecoming, and plan how we can encourage more Black women to fall in love with craft beer all in one night. And so I know that when I first entered the beer community, I didn't have lots of interaction with women of color because, to be quite frank, I didn't know that there were women of color that really liked beer. And so it wasn't until I really began to branch out and meet other people that I realized, well, there are tons of people that like me that like craft beer. Do you see them on brewery pages, social media? Probably not, but they exist and they're consumers, and they're patronizing your businesses and they're spending money because it's something they enjoy. All right, shape. So shape was our next word. I'll go back to the definition. So to develop in a particular way or progress. I put this picture of Play-Doh up there because I think a lot of times when you talk about shaping community or shaping culture, people need to realize that one of the biggest things or one of the best things you can do as a brewery owner, as a person, as an individual is know how to pivot, know how to adapt, know how to change in different situations. And I think for a lot of breweries and, a lot of consumers that aren't really sure like where breweries stand when it comes to a lot of different things, they have this mentality like, oh, you know what, we've always done it that way. And so I think a lot of us realize that that mentality can be really, really toxic. No one really likes change, but you hear the quote, change is inevitable all the time. And I think that's true. But not only that, but I think change has the ability to be good. And, you often hear impact positive change together. And so when I think of this Play-Doh, when I think of shaping, I think, yeah, maybe people that drank beer looked a certain way for so long because that's the only thing that you knew. But now, guess what? The narrative is changing. Now, people want to feel like they belong in tap rooms. So these are just some of the questions that I threw out that generally are kind of the same questions, just asked in different ways. But when I think about that, oh, we've always done it that way mentality, the biggest thing I think we should do is begin to challenge ourselves. Like I said, talk about music, talk about events. Maybe it's something you never thought of, but what can we do differently to possibly bring different types of people through the door? What can we do differently to help build community? And then how can we build upon what we already are currently doing? So maybe you do something really, really well. Okay, don't get rid of it. You don't have to change it completely, but what can you build on or add to it that can make things even better? And then I think the biggest thing, and where a lot of people miss the mark, how can we put more intention behind what it is we're doing? So yeah, in your mind, you may think that your hiring practices are fair because you post them on Brew. What's the website? I can't think. Brew something. I can think right now. But you post them on the website. You do this, and so you think it's fine. Okay, well, intention comes in. Okay, it's great that you posted Brewbound. It's great that you posted there, but who's actually looking on Brewbound for those jobs? Is it the same demographic of people that always look? If so, then guess what? Continue to post it on Brewbound, but maybe you also posted on the new site that Beer Culture out of Florida, out of St. Pete, Florida, just created for people of color that are interested in the beer industry, honestly, for all people, but just a different avenue. So putting intention behind things has the ability to make such a difference. Like I shared earlier with that stock image, we pointed out that, hey, we know this isn't a person of color. We know that the image was edited. How about just being more intentional about it? And so the response we got back from that group was like, you know what? That's fine. Would you be available for some images? And so my friend was available to go and have pictures taken of them so that they can use those pictures and images. So intention will take you a long way. And I think we're realizing now with just everything going on in the world, in the community, and definitely in the beer industry, is that people are paying attention and people are watching. And if you just put a little bit more intention and thought behind what it is that you're doing, it will come across so much more genuine and people will receive it a lot better. All right. So we talked about behaviors, we talked about interactions, we talked about what it means to shape something. So these three things I think tie together in what I think crafting community is all about. So when I decided to name this presentation, I had just finished a collaboration brew day with a brewery here in North Carolina in Raleigh. And I just love the whole idea behind the event and why we did it. And so that's where I got the name from. But I think in talking about that, when you talk about crafting community and what that means in the beer industry, I think all of this is tied together. The tap room and the people behind the bar, the environment that exists. When you talk about culture, the type of culture that you create, inside that tap room, do people feel welcome? Is it a safe space? Community, are you actually connected to the community that your tap room exists in? Is your beer community separate from the community that your tap room exists in? Because I think we realize now that for a lot of breweries, it is. So the brewery exists in this community where actually people live and work and play and they have families, but there is no connection at all to what's happening in the doors of the brewery. Yet within the brewery, the people that walk through the door, they have their own sense of community because they're the ones that actually support the business. They patronize them, they drink the beer. So I think a lot of times when we talk about community, we're talking about two separate groups. But one of the things I love about just this whole crafting community and this idea is, okay, how do we make those groups one? Or how do we at least help them to interact? Because I think that's pretty powerful. So one of the things I'll say before even going into how we do that is that representation matters. I can't stress this enough. And, I took these words off of an Instagram post I did a few weeks ago where I said, from Black and brown hands to Black and brown culture to Black and brown thoughts and ideas, we need you to see and hear us. And that means a lot to me because, like I said, when you talk about scrolling through breweries, Instagram pages, when you talk about representation on a lot of different things, we see a lot of times how a Black culture is represented on can arts or in names of beers. And it's great. I support it. But at the same time, when you walk through the doors of that brewery, there is no direct connection or there is no appreciation, it seems, of that culture. And so one of the things I always like to showcase is this page. I talk about Beer Chick being one of my babies. This is one of my babies too. Black girls drink beer too. Because when I entered the beer industry, like I said, I didn't recall seeing many women of color like me in the city that I lived in that drink beer. I would go to breweries and I would be the only female a lot of times, only Black women a lot of times. And so it wasn't until I was able to just get on social media and connect with others that I realized that there are a ton of us that like beer, Black and brown women. And I started this page really just kind of speaking on my experience as a Black woman. And so it's called Black Girls Drink Beer Too. But as I began to just meet more people, and one of my friends in particular, Razia, who used to work at Pilot Brewing with me, and she's Hispanic, I realized, wow, this is not just a struggle that me as a Black woman face. This is a struggle that a lot of Hispanic women face, a lot of Asian women face. And so I've really kind of opened it up to include all of them. So on the page, you'll see all women of color represented, and just really sharing and changing the narrative as far as, letting you physically see them, because I think it's important to see it. And then also just sharing, their favorite beers and where they live. And so if you go visit that page, they're from all over the country. So we are definitely drinking beer. So I think it's important that you see and hear us. All right. So back to that event I said I was a part of that really just shaped for me, I guess, what it is I want to talk about today. So I did a collaboration brew day with a brewery in Cary, North Carolina called Bond Brothers. And so Bond Brothers and Pink Boot Society of Raleigh decided that they wanted to do something. They wanted to take action. Weeks leading up to this, I had been posting a lot about just, us actually doing something instead of just talking about it. We talk a lot about diversity and inclusion in the tap room, but when will we actually do things that will make a difference? And so I will say, on so many different sides, there's so much you can do. There's a lot you can do on the consumer side. That's where a lot of my focus is. There's a lot you can do on the actual brewery side when it comes to just ownership. And so you have great groups like Crown and Hops with their 8 Pill Trails, where they're actually trying to pour money back into the community to really support equity, because I think that's a part of the conversation we don't talk about a lot. We talk about racial diversity, we talk about inclusiveness, but equity and having access to certain capital and opportunity, I think, is also an important part of this conversation. And so you have groups that focus on a lot of that. And so for this Crafted Conversations Collaboration Brew Day, the whole idea was to bring people together that you may not normally bring together. And so obviously you had some people that were already in the beer industry with Pink Boots, and they invited me to come down. But you also had some community members. So, we had restaurant owners that attended. We had a woman that had her own biker apparel group, biker apparel company that attended. We had real estate agents that attended. We had some community organizers that attended. And then we also had some brewers. And one of the things I really loved about this event is that literally a lot of people that walked into that space outside of us that were in the beer industry had very little knowledge of beer, had obviously never brewed a beer before, but we invited them and they showed up. And so, this quote is one of the things that they use when they plan this event, but it's something that I said because I truly believe it in my heart and soul that if you really want beer to be for everyone, you have to make space for everyone. So you just can't say that it is for everyone, but then I walk through your doors and I don't feel welcome. And so this event that we had was so powerful because we brought different groups of people together to brew this beer and also have conversation. And so in the picture, you'll see a picture of the beer that we brewed. We decided to do something really light and approachable and easy. So we did a wheat beer. Very citrusy, delicious, light and refreshing. Literally, for all the people that weren't even the biggest beer fans, they truly enjoyed it. And so when you talk about, bringing the community together and building relationships and building partnerships, this is something that you can easily do. We have a lot of breweries that collaborate all the time. We see collabs with breweries, but this was the first time that, I had really saw a bunch of different people involved. Breweries will collaborate with maybe someone that they donate money to and brew a beer, but just inviting a bunch of different people into the space and saying, hey, we want to have a conversation with you. Let's talk. And who's to say that, I truly believe in 6 degrees of separation. So let's say that of the 2 restaurant owners there, they know 100 people that they'll invite to the brewery now because they were able to actually go to a brewery for the first time and try a beer and learn about the process and brew beer. That's really powerful. The woman that has the women's biker apparel company, so it was a bunch of women that were motorcycle riders. Who's to say that, hey, they won't have their next biker rally at the brewery because they realize that, this is actually a cool and safe space. So just, having events like this, I think is so powerful because it puts people in front of each other that normally wouldn't be. And so often in life, I think we go through life living in our little silos that unless someone pressures us to cross paths with someone that we don't know or someone that we're unfamiliar with, more than likely we stay in our small circles. And so you build community by having conversation with people. Next thing. And so, yeah, at this point, I just really want to kind of bring it back full circle and go back to what the whole mission of this was in the beginning. So we talked a little bit about tap room culture and how that plays a part. But now we're talking about different ways that I have been trying to, bridge the gap and build partnerships and build community. And one of the things I did is through this More Bridges and Less Barriers campaign that I started. So this was truly an initiative that I started because I realized that I got tired of being the token Black girl at my brewery. I got tired of being the token person as it relates to working in the industry in my city and doing lots of things. And so I remember on my first day of training at my new job, I work at Free Range Brewing. I remember there was another Black girl in the room with me. And I remember being so shocked because, I was so used to just being the only one. So I went home that night, went to bed, and I woke up just still thinking about it. And I was like, you know what? I want to help women of color that are interested in getting into the beer industry. I want to help them get connected because, like I mentioned before, even on that Black Girls Drink Beer 2 page, I know a lot of women that are beer drinkers that love beer, not a lot of Black women or women of color that work in craft beer. Not because they have no desire to, just because they just didn't really know how to get their feet wet or how to get their feet in the door. And so me, obviously, being a supporter of education in general, and having my certified beer server, I thought, well, you know what? Maybe that can be the thing that bridges the gap. So the whole idea behind this t-shirt campaign was, we already have enough barriers in place as it relates to just everything in society. We're so disconnected. What can we do to just bring everyone together? And so I came up with the More Bridges, Less Barriers. And the whole idea behind that is helping people get connected to the beer industry simply because they have a desire to do so. And in my case, helping women of color get connected because I realized that when you talk about representation, there weren't many of us. So yeah, women representation, we see is growing in the beer industry, and you have organizations like Pink Boots that support all women. But as it relates to women of color, there is not much representation. So I created this shirt. A lot of awesome people decided to support it and buy it. And so here are some of the pictures. My favorite is the one that is in the center of the group. It's actually a law firm here in North Carolina that work with breweries. And so they support breweries on trademarking and a lot of different things. And one of the lawyers there actually brought a shirt for everyone in the office. And so talk about making my heart smile. That was amazing. And then my other favorite picture is the picture in the bottom left of this little girl holding the shirt. Her dad sent me that picture, and let's just say all the feels, because I think back to, being a little girl and not knowing what it is that I wanted to do when I grow up. And so now, having pictures and seeing pictures of people that look like me that work in beer, gives me hope. And who's to say this little girl won't grow up one day to be an amazing brewer? Who knows? So created the shirt, raised money, sold the shirts, and created Road to 100, which is an initiative I started to basically help connect women of color in the beer industry. So I have about 80 women right now going through the program to get their certified beer server. And we're doing a 12-week program where they're actually learning and just really just soaking up all the knowledge. And instead of just really forcing them to just learn it all at once, we're kind of breaking it down to establish a foundation. And so my hopes with that is that obviously I'm bridging women to the beer community, but more importantly that I'm possibly creating a whole new set of women that will enter the beer industry's workforce and infiltrate it as such. Infiltrate is such a bad word of sorts, but I like the word infiltrate. It's like, you know what? I'm not asking for permission. I'm just going to do it. So hoping to help all of these women get their certified beer server, because a lot of times they don't come to the table with the experience. They've never worked at a brewery before. Probably growing up, breweries weren't even on their radar. I didn't even know breweries were a thing growing up. So, for a lot of them, they don't have that experience, but if we can equip them with the education, then maybe that will help open the door. And so that's my hope. And I will say, I've had several breweries that have reached out to me saying, hey, do you have any women that are interested in a job in this area? Because we're looking. So I'm really excited to see this come to fruition and just see how it ends up. But last but not least, and just talking about, ways that you can build partnerships, ways that you can build community. These are just some suggestions. And like I said, I don't have all the answers. This is my perspective. This is me sharing with you things that I think could possibly help based on personal experience. Talk about your brewery and the community that it exists in. Host a community meeting at your tap room. Stay informed on the issues affecting your community. One of the things that annoys me is that a lot of times people feel as if, oh, well, I have to explain to you why you should care. I have to explain to you why this is important. And at the end of the day, no one has to educate anyone on anything. I mean, it's nice if people have questions to help them out, but at the end of the day, people should stay informed on issues that affect their community anyway, because you exist in it. Volunteering in a community that your brewery exists in. Maybe you go pick up trash, in the neighborhood, something as small as that. Do your research, and I can't stress that enough. Do your own research and figure out what is it, that's happening in your community that your brewery exists in. What are some things that people are possibly struggling with? Is there a huge homeless population? Can you have a food drive? Can you collaborate with a soup kitchen in the area to make sure that people in your neighborhood are eating? Use funds from your beer to support an activity in your community. We see this happen all the time through different runs and things that we see. And I think last but not least, you talk about identity as an individual, and I started off with my identity and what I felt like that was. Well, I feel like as breweries, you should know what your values are and make sure that they're demonstrated in all areas of your brewery. So yeah, as the owner, you should know what you value, but guess what? That person behind the bar should also know what you value, and that should be demonstrated in their actions as they greet and interact with people in that tap room, because that shapes a person's experience. And in conclusion, I think the one thing, and hopefully I've come full circle to answer the question, so I have it back in front of me to make sure. And the question was, how can breweries and customers engage in conversation with their local community to strengthen relationships, build partnerships, and work together to address issues that affect their community? Very broad, but I think when you talk about strengthening relationships, when you talk about building partnerships, when you talk about working together to address issues that affect their community, I think there's one common theme: communication. And so that's the one thing that ties all of these together. If you're not having conversations with the people that come, into your tap rooms, if you're not having conversations with the people that live in your community, if you are so disconnected from your staff's behaviors, then I think it's really hard to strengthen those relationships. It's going to be really hard to build those partnerships. And it's going to be really, really hard to work together to address issues that affect their community, especially if you don't know what those issues are. Hence, going back to making sure you do your research. So I don't think I have all the answers. I don't think anyone has all the answers. I know that we have some very intelligent people in the beer community that are, having these conversations. They are, talking about these things. And I think that's really powerful. But more than anything, I think it really requires intention, and it requires you wanting to strengthen those relationships. It requires you wanting to build those partnerships and wanting to help address things that affect their community. And if you don't care about any of this, then guess what? You can easily, turn the other cheek. But if you care, it definitely requires some amount of intention and communication. So that's the end of my presentation. I'm going to see if anyone has any questions. Definitely feel free to always reach out to me. I'm an open book. I love to talk. Hence, I'm almost at the end of my time. So let me just see if we have any questions. All right. Oh, thanks, Janice. So no questions. Yeah, I really, really appreciate you all. Like I said, reach out to me. I don't have all the answers, but I'm always willing to have a conversation, especially if it's a conversation over beer. But I truly hope that, you were able to take at least one thing from this presentation, and that moving forward, you'll be more intentional about crafting community inside your tap rooms as well as outside of your tap rooms. So thank you so much.